What's up, folks, and welcome back to Dyce Reacts, where we are staying in London, England tonight. Oh yeah, we are going to be checking out 5 British communication differences that confused me as an American. Right, side checks one out. We ain't going to waste no more time. Just going to get right into it, folks. We're going to get right into it. Oh yeah.
Hi and welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin. I'm a dual UK and American citizen, and today I'm talking about communication differences in the UK that shocked me as an American when I first moved here. And when I say communication in this video, I'm talking more about communication methods rather than actual words used, and I'll get started on an example. So number one is Americans tend to do more talking into their phone or FaceTiming in public without using headphones, so that basically everybody can hear your conversation. So sometimes when you're in a public place in America, whether you're on public transportation or you're at an airport or you're just in a shared environment, people are much more comfortable just letting everybody hear both sides of their conversation. And like I said, there's this trend of like talking into your phone rather than holding it to your ear. I can't explain it. I'm just telling you it's a thing. Now, in the UK, I did not notice this trend as much. Maybe some people might do it, but everybody's gonna kind of look at you like you need to stop talking so loud or put your phone to your ear like a normal person. I've also noticed that most people aren't FaceTiming in public, and if they do, they're having some sort of headphones in so you can't hear the other side of the conversation, so it's more like a normal phone conversation in terms of the level of volume. And again, you'll notice this when you're on UK public transportation, like a train, or you're in a UK airport or something like that, that people do tend to keep their conversations and their communications still a bit more to themselves, a bit quieter, as opposed to in America, where I've definitely overheard, not on purpose, lots of people's conversations. Now, the next thing on my list has to do with how people text. And a lot of people don't realize this if you don't have friends in between both countries, but in the UK and in Europe in general, using WhatsApp to communicate is very, very, very common. So even though I live in the UK and I mostly communicate, well, that's not entirely true. I talk to people from the UK and the US, but in the UK, I don't actually have anybody really that I would send a regular text message.
Talking about that, I loved using Skype. I can't even remember my information to sign in, but I know it's a British thing. I think Skype is a British thing. It's more used in England, especially during the time of Messenger. So I'm wondering if it's still around. Hit me up in the comments, you lovely British folks. Is it still around, and do you use it, and how often do you use it?
Too, because most people use WhatsApp. So I will send them a WhatsApp message to their UK phone number, and it's just this really common thing to do. And if you're in the UK watching this, you're probably like, well, what do Americans do? Americans still basically just send regular text messages to your phone, whether that's like an iMessage or just a text from phone to phone, as opposed to using an app. So all of my American friends and family, I message through iMessage, or I gonna send a text message. They don't have WhatsApp, and if you send them a WhatsApp, because I made them download it like 3 years ago, not all of them will check it or use it regularly. It really seems to be a UK versus American divide. I have a few maybe theories about this having to do with the fact that in the UK, it's a smaller country, it's closer to Europe, people might have more connections and more friends that are global, I guess, in which case using like an app makes it a little bit easier, I guess, to connect. Whereas in the US, maybe most people are just talking to other Americans, and so the text messages on our phone are fine. Now, next on my list of communication differences has to do with exclamation points, because I'm not gonna lie to you, Americans use a lot more exclamation points in our communication, both in text messages and in emails, and also in work emails, it's more common and more acceptable to use exclamation points in the US. This is a communication difference I had to get used to in moving to the UK, because you'll find exclamation points used much more sparingly, and sometimes you do come across as like the golden retriever American, always using exclamation marks in your communication. I've embraced it at this point, but it is something to know about, especially if you're working in the UK as an American. They're not mad at you by not using exclamation points. It's just not really how people here communicate as much. Now, another communication difference between the countries.
I mean, that's a good observation, and it's a strange observation. She's so detailed. She looks at everything. I wouldn't know because I don't really have American friends versus UK friends for me to see the difference. So, I mean, this is just so interesting. I don't think anybody else can make that observation like she just did. It's just so unique. Very, very unique.
Has to do with the price of mobile phone plans. I've talked about this before, but mobile phone plans in the UK are much cheaper than mobile phone plans in the US. I'm talking people's phone plans in the US can be easily hundreds per month, whereas in the UK, a lot of people are paying like £10, maybe £15. If you're paying like £20 for one person, I'm wondering what is even included in that, because most people can get everything they need on their regular phone plan for like £15. America is just so expensive for mobile phone plans, and part of it has to do with the lack of competition in the US, and part of it has to do with it is a larger infrastructure that needs to be built because America is a much larger country to cover. But still, when you talk about mobile phone plans, actually Americans call them cell phone plans, Brits call them mobile phone plans, but when you talk about those plans and you compare prices, it is so much cheaper in the UK. And the last thing on my list regarding communication has to do with the fact that it can actually be easier to communicate in the UK using your data or phone plan because the coverage is better. And I'll talk specifically about 4G because 4G basically has a more extensive and better coverage in the UK than in the US. This is due to a lot of the US having large areas of basically rural lands that isn't covered, or large national parks where you're definitely not getting service. The UK is more dense, it's more densely populated, and it's just smaller, and so it is easier to build a more extensive network. But I definitely enjoy this in the UK, where I'm never going to not have service for that long compared to in America. And so if somebody in the US is telling you sorry they didn't get back to you because they didn't have service, they're probably telling the truth. But if they tell you that in the UK, I would inquire further as to why they didn't have service and exactly where they were, because it's likely that they did have service unless they were in some really specific areas of like the Scottish Highlands or something like that.
She made some very interesting observation. I don't think I would have noticed that unless well, someone can notice it, but you have to actually be looking for differences in a sense. America being so large and there's so much land that is not really developed. So if you go far out in the rural areas, you tend to lose signal and have a lot of issues making contact. The UK is more dense, so the infrastructure would be easier to build in a place that's more dense in terms of the efficiency of that technology. When MSN was really booming, it was like in my country, it was really challenging the MSN at some point because many people that I know had a Skype as well, especially people that had people from abroad. So it's something it's an app I haven't heard at all in a long time, but I really love to use it. It was ahead of its time compared to MSN. So I need to know more about that. You British folks, where is Skype? Hit me up in the comments. Yes. If you want to see a long journal archer that I do, hit move on Dyce Reacts via the music reactions. This is where I'm going to be making my exit. So until next time, peace out.